Hey everyone, welcome to the Banh Mi Chronicles podcast. So I am joined with two good friends of mine, Hac Tran and Nuky Pham, and they are now the co-owners of Haibayô Cafe on Argyle Street in the Chicago Uptown neighborhood. Um, the cafe has recently opened up several weeks ago this fall. Congratulations to both of you. The
Thank
Asian
you.
Argyle community has been home to many Chinese, Vietnamese, and Cambodian immigrants and refugees for the past 50 years. And I've known for I've known both of you for like several years now, and what I've learned about you is that you have been paving the way in preserving the identity and culture of that community, despite the many threats it has faced with many folks, including the Vietnamese folks migrating from the city to the suburbs, the wave of gentrification that hovers over, the CTA construction, and so forth. And Hawk, you were on my show actually in the first season, 2019, which is like 6 years ago, which is quite it's quite it's quite shocking because it's like I can't believe it's been that long, but it also feels forever ago at the same time. And that was when I knew you and Nookie had already been studying Habayo. You were doing late night parties in the Asia and Argyle community. And then the pandemic happened, and both of you were, working closely with these businesses in the wake of anti-Asian hate and the after effects of the pandemic. And now you're finally opening your cafe. And I want to say congratulations. And what has that been like for both of you to bring this long-awaited dream to the neighborhood that we all grew up in?
Yeah, thank you so much, Randy, for that introduction and also, for all your support throughout the years. Yeah, I can't believe it's been 6 years since the last conversation we've had. But yeah, I wanted to let also Jennifer
Mhm.
share any
Yep,
words.
sure. Thank you again, Randy. This has been an incredible journey, and also knowing you through the years and you attending our late night parties because that's how we started. Um, and I'm just so grateful to be able to be on this journey with Hawk, my good friend from for many years now, and to be able to build not only a cafe but a community space.
Yeah. So what was the genesis in starting this cafe then? And like what was triggering this idea?
Sure. Well, I'll start how well we our intention for Argyle Street was to bring people back to the neighborhood. I grew up in the neighborhood. My parents were the first Vietnamese business owners, and um, both Hac and I have been friends since we were young. And his parents and my parents were also friends. And we were just chatting about ways we can bring people back to the neighborhood because we've seen it change through the years, and we noticed that the younger generation wasn't spending much time on Argyle Street. And so we started off as a party and we had like a late night, pho hour. We had highlighted Southeast Asian DJs, and it was just a, really fun way to bring people back to the neighborhood. And from there, it just grew and morphed into something a lot bigger than we had imagined. But the intention of bringing people back to the neighborhood was always there, and that's how the cafe idea even started because um, what started off as a party turned into a festival. Then we started to do mutual aid work, and then we started to apply for grants from the city of Chicago, and we were able to throw festivals um, and through these conversations of bringing people together, we were just trying to find ways to have people be able to work with one another. And so the idea of having a cafe where people can co-work, they can have conversations and just enjoy having some drink and food and spend time on Argyle Street after like the later hours. So that's how the idea started. Hack, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think just to kind of echo what Nikki said, like we started as this pop-up party with really no kind of blueprint of the future. So it kind of organically happened, and we kind of just adapted to whatever kind of the world threw at us. But there was always an intention of like being grounded and rooted in like community. And you were lucky enough to have those relationships in the past, just by being involved in the community in different capacities. And, like I think like for the cafe itself, the brick and mortar, like an opportunity came up post-pandemic. We were already 501(c)(3) at the time,
Mm.
in addition to having kind of that LLC. So we're kind of a social enterprise model where we both have a business side, but we have a strong nonprofit wing as well. And, the opportunity arose post-pandemic where the city of Chicago was offering, it's called like the Chicago Redevelopment or CRG grant, which was like investing in construction capital projects that have strong, like basically impact to certain communities of color throughout the city. So that was a great opportunity. We spoke with Ellen from Q Ideas because she also like has the space on Argyle, and she kind of took over the business and was thinking about like either shutting her doors or downsizing. So it was like a great opportunity for us to come together and reimagine like, hey, let's apply for this grant. It might be a long shot. If we get it, then we move forth. And like to our surprise, like we were able to get this grant that really helped redevelop and reimagine the space that we have here today. So it's a very symbiotic relationship between like Q Ideas as well as Haibayô in terms of like creating this kind of social enterprise model that has different identities that coexist within the same space. But like Nuky said, I think it's really critically important that what we're creating is like not just a cafe, right? I think the cafe allows us to utilize the space that we've developed for people to come here, connect as a third space, when we weren't really gonna utilize the space anyways. So I think that's like an opportunity that we saw fit for the community. So we kind of pursued that route. But yeah, I think it's been, I guess, now like 3 weeks or so, two and a
Wow.
half weeks of opening the cafe. And it's been, like we've gotten traction, and it's good to see, people reach out, wanting to utilize space, collaborate, bring their own ideas. Like tonight, we have an open mic night. It's from Gen Z Filipinx community member who frequented our cafe and wanted to just host something. So we're collaborating on that front. So like like to provide space is ultimately the goal of like drawing people back here, having dialogue of community, culture, heritage, but also providing platforms for younger people to think about how they can contribute and envision the future of Argyle.
Mm.
Mhm.
I really appreciate this being able for both of you to like share the journey in creating this space. And what I visited the space about actually back in May. It was like before it was officially opened, months before it was opened, and I was like walking through, I was like, wow, this is such a beautiful atmosphere. And there were like homages to old Vietnamese pop stars of the 80s and 90s, and then I also saw like one of the big signs. I can't remember what storefront it used to be from, but that blew me away. It's like it started conjuring up some very old memories, and just walking around it, it's like, wow, this is what it means to preserve the history of the street. I mean, this is a street that I used to go to growing up as a kid. I mean, me and my brothers and well, my family would always go there every weekend. And back then, I used to hate those trips because this was before. I mean, if I had a cell phone or if I had an iPad at the time, then maybe I wouldn't have suffered as much. But I mean, I'm a very restless kid, so I was like, for an hour on that car was brutal. But I always find a lot of nostalgia coming back, and I always have these weird memories about what this place used to be. What was that business before Q Ideas and Haibayô came in? What was that business? Because I thought it was Sunwa for some reason. Because Sunwa used to be over in that area, that specific spot. So yeah, it's for me. It's like
It
I
is
always try.
Sunwa.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Was it
Yeah,
Sunwa?
Yeah,
it's
Okay.
original
the
Sunwa.
old original Sunwa building. But before then, it was like a Japanese gift shop. Like I think
Wow.
even before our time, because I look at
Hmm.
old images of Argyle, and it was like this Japanese gift shop, which is like interesting because like now like Q Ideas is kind of like represents that. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
done wild. So where the cafe is in the back is where they were roasting ducks and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh wow. That's what I was thinking. I was like, this has got to be like where Samoa used to be. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, this also kind of goes to show you like the many changes that have happened in the past, say, 40 years. And a lot of the parents that um that used to frequent there or own these businesses have now since retired. And Nuki, I know that this year has been very tough with the recent passing of your father, but I think it's important to talk about your father's legacy here because he was one of the first Vietnamese um, owner in, or
Mhm.
he had the first Vietnamese owned business on that
Mhm.
street. It was Mini TX Pharmacy, which now stands, which you have also been,
Mhm.
you know, leading and taking over that business. But what was going through your dad's mind when he decided to open up this business, and what was his experience prior to coming to America? Like
Mm.
why the pharmacy? Um why why that in particular? What was about Argyle that made it very
Mhm.
intriguing?
So my dad was a pharmacist in Vietnam. And he also had a pharmacy, also on a corner in Vietnam in Quang Ngai, which is like the middle of Vietnam. And he ended up losing everything from the war and fled to America. And his when he first came here, both my mom and my dad ended up in Iowa. And
Mm,
oh no, they ended up at Fort Chaffee in Arkansas, a refugee camp. And then they saw that there was some opportunity in going to school at Iowa, so they ended up at the University of Iowa. And my at that time, my grandma lived in Chicago, which is my dad's mother, and so my dad ended up spending time in Chicago right after he went to school. And so there were at that time there were Uptown was dense in, nonprofit organizations, and they were helping a lot of the Vietnamese refugees. And so my dad ended up working right by Truman College at a pharmacy, right like across the street. And he noticed that there were many Vietnamese people in the neighborhood, and he started to translate the prescriptions in Vietnamese.
mm,
And so he really, I think it was just kind of, there was just so many Vietnamese people in the neighborhood, and he saw a need for it. And when my mom got out of school, she ended up choosing the building that the pharmacy is at right now. She just thought a corner would be really beautiful, and there were a couple of Asian grocery stores close by, and the price was right. And so they ended up, signing a lease. And my dad down the road ended up purchasing that part of the building. And they were able to open up their pharmacy. And it wasn't only a pharmacy. The name of the pharmacy is called Mini Tung Sa Pharmacy, which means mini mall. And so they also had a video rental shop, and
mm,
it was also the first music shop on Argyle, which is interesting.
mm.
And they sold fabric and, really just whatever people wanted and needed at the time. Like folks were asking for movies that were dubbed in Vietnamese, and music, and they wanted to get their film developed. And so anything like people were asking for, my dad ended up providing or bringing on people that could provide that.
Mm. Yeah, I think what I remembered back in the day was like, yes, I do remember it was a video rental store too. I mean,
Hmm.
it felt like there was a different storefront, like besides just the pharmacy. I was like, wow, this is very unique. And was it
Yeah.
like that? Was it very similar to what was it like back in the homeland in terms of the
He
way it's
his,
structured? Yeah.
no, no, his pharmacy in Vietnam was just solely a pharmacy, nothing else.
Mm,
And it's interesting because I we weren't able to have conversations about his past up right before his passing, because I
mm,
think it was too difficult to
mm,
for him to share about his past. And he would sometimes get angry, when I would ask questions. And I
mm,
think it was just tough for him to be able to talk about it. And so Um, I don't know too much of the detail, but I do know that it meant a lot to him. And the the building where the pharmacy was in Quang Ngai was owned by my grandmother at the time.
Mhm.
So this legacy business continuing.
Yeah, I'm also like in continuing this part, but I remembered there was a story that your dad was about to sell that business. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
this was like several years ago, and I mean, I think I was hearing it on a podcast that you were on, and I was like busy cleaning my apartment, and I almost like literally stopped. I literally just dropped my broom, and when I heard that
Mhm.
your father was about to sell it, I think it was to a CVS, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which
correct.
honestly would have completely changed the
Hmm.
face of that community. What was going through your dad's mind at that time when he was looking to sell that business? And how did how was he convinced to not sell that?
Hmm. So he, at the time, CVS multiple times had reached out to him and wanted to purchase the business. And my dad, for many years, he wasn't interested, but he did notice, like, he's getting older. My parents were already thinking about a retirement plan, and both his kids, my brother and I, weren't interested in pharmacy. And he just really, like, for him, I think the idea, like, he wanted us to take it over, but we both, my brother and I, weren't interested. And so my dad, bought up the idea of selling the pharmacy, and that's when I realized, like, oh damn, like, this is something that could end up being just part of the past, and it didn't sit right with me. And I started to give it some more thought, and I realized at the time that I wanted to continue what he created, but maybe in my own way, because at the time I was in acupuncture school, and
Mm,
I I I I was always more interested in, like, alternative medicine. And and so him and I both had a conversation, and we were thinking of ways that we can continue the business, because I felt that the community needed some alternative ways of healing. And so I brought up idea of, like, like, let's add more supplements, let's add more essential oils, just like, just little things just to add to the pharmacy. And he was open to the idea. And so I was like, okay, yeah, let's make it a East meets West pharmacy. Let's bring like, get the younger generation involved. And yeah, he was interested. And then from there, we were able to continue the pharmacy.
mhm. I'm also
Yeah.
very curious about like the way the pharmacy is, especially as the Vietnamese elder population is aging and passing
Mm.
away. Um, like, and also with the competition too, like, of course, with CVS, Walgreens, Target, and so forth. How has this business been able to sustain itself despite the many changes that have happened in that neighborhood?
We have a strong relationship with the patients that come in, and I think because they've been coming for so many years, and we know the families well. I think just from there, it's just that community oriented connection is what sets us apart from, like, a Walgreens or something.
Hmm.
um the folks, like, the pharmacy technicians, including the pharmacist, also my partner, like, they're constantly checking on the patients as well. Like, they know them by name. They know their sons, they know their daughters.
Hmm.
And I think it's just like this strong connection that has always been there. And and so that's been nice. Like, they'll drive in from the suburbs just to pick up their medication, which I'm so grateful for that we still have that
Yeah.
connection. But the area is changing quite a bit, and it's harder for the older folks to come pick up their medication, so that their kids or their grandkids will come pick up the medication. But yeah, we're thinking of ways to connect with the changing community now. Like, we're actually remodeling the space, and we're getting a new sign, and just
Mm.
updating it to bring it into the new, I guess,
Yeah.
new age.
If you have that old sign, I think you have to bring it back to the Haibayô Cafe. Just like you have.
Yeah.
I think you have to because that's a landmark. Like
Yeah.
I, like I am a person who believes in preserving history. So I
Yes.
really hope that you make sure that you take that sign with you too
Oh
if that
yeah, yeah.
happens.
No, no, we're preserving all the signs on Argyle as if we have the opportunity to, we will.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll have enough space at some point, you know. But like,
We'll make space.
yeah, yeah. And for Huck, like what really led you to, I know this is a very loaded question, but maybe more specifically, like what uh what amped up your need to invest into this community? What makes what makes Argyle so special to you that you feel the need uh to make this part of your experience?
Yeah, for me, like I didn't live on Argyle Street. My father lived here, but when my parents got married, they moved out to the west side of Chicago and then eventually to the suburbs. But they were always involved. Like my mom worked as a secretary for VAI in the very early years. And then my dad was on the board throughout the 90s, so I was always here. But like for me, like the origin story of my connection to Argyle actually is because of Argyle. My parents met each other on Wake Island, which is like right after leaving in 75, April 30th. They went to Wake Island, which was like a military US island or whatever. And my dad was like teaching English, and my mom was his assistant at the refugee camps. And then also, like similar to Nuki's parents, my parents also went through Fort Chaffee or Chaffee in Arkansas. My dad was sponsored by a college here in Chicagoland, and then my mom actually was sponsored by like a Lutheran church, her family, to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But I think it was like the snowstorm of like 78 or 79 or whatever, or maybe even 77. I can't remember the year. But back then there was not many Vietnamese restaurants. So actually one of our family friends, Nuki Bakman,
Mm.
they used to live on Sheridan and Argyle, in that building where the tattoo place is now on the second
Ah.
floor. So they lived there and they used to sell pho out of their house and then they had like mahjong. So my dad was there that night, like gambling and eating pho. And it was like the same night my mom and her friends from University of like Wisconsin, Milwaukee, they're like, hey, we want to go to Chinatown, Chicago. But then because of the snowstorm, like one of her friends heard like, oh, well, there's Argyle, and then we heard about this person's house that they sell pho from. So they're like, okay, well, it's closer, so let's go there. So my mom was there, and like they like crossed paths again, and my dad saw her, got her address and phone number, and like that's how they started reconnecting again. So he would like write letters to her and then go over there and visit. And like because of like Argyle Street and like that very initial, like place of like home after being, you know, fleeing your home and building community here is how my parents reconnected. So like, I there's like Argyle to me is like home, even though I never like lived physically on Argyle. But like for me, like I never had the intention to be here actually. So like I studied during my like college years, I went to DePaul for like political science and like sociology, international studies. And I actually studied abroad in Vietnam in '06 in Hanoi. So I studied abroad in Hanoi. I came back. I never wanted to be in Chicago. And then the following year, I went to Budapest, Hungary. I studied there, and then like immediately when I came back and graduated, I moved back to Vietnam for 3 years, and then I, you know, came back here with the intention of going to graduate school, which I did. I did a master's in urban planning and policy in international planning with the intention of like, hey, I'm going to move back to Vietnam and do international development work because I was like involved with like Save the Children, um, another organization I lived in Central Vietnam. The author and filmmaker or author Lately Hayslip in California. There was a movie Oliver
Mm.
Stone made about her called Heaven and Earth. She was actually my boss in Hoi An. So doing
Wow.
a lot of like kind of development work with like really like deep rural communities in the mountains. So like we did a lot of different types of like flood mitigation work, job development stuff like in Vietnam. And that's what I wanted to pursue. But like during my time in graduate school, like I was working at Southeast Asia Center and like started getting involved back into the community. This was probably like 2012 through 2014. where I like started like seeing like, hey, Argyle is really changing. Like it's no longer this, even back then, like 12, 13 years
Mhm.
ago, right?
Mhm.
Like it was
Mhm.
different than like what I remembered in the 90s and even early 2000s. So like a lot of my research pivoted, my master's project pivoted to create basically my master's project was called like Street Access. And it was like a social enterprise food entrepreneurship program with a cafe element for Argyle Street back then. But then like that's where when I reconnected with Nuky, like a lot of things, her ideas. So I had like a basis of like, hey man, eventually maybe we could do this, but like when we came together, like we created Haibayô, and it's like a kind of a fusion of her ideas, really great ideas, because she's so creative, and then like this food entrepreneurship cafe idea. I think that was like a somewhat of an unspoken basis for what we are today, but like we never sat down and be like, hey, this is the blueprint, right?
Mhm.
Um, but like I think that's how
Mhm.
I got recommitted to the street. As like a caseworker, getting to know the community members again. And then like I worked for the Chamber of Commerce in the last 8 years. I left earlier this year. Being able to develop like really strong relationships with like business owners and landowners of this community. So like yeah, I think like all those kind of experiences coalesced alongside the developing relationship of like a rekindling of friendship with Nookie and like creating Haibayô to like internally decide like, hey, I'm committed to Argyle again.
Yeah, I think to see this come to fruition and also how you came about it is like it's almost serendipitous. Like it's not something that you would think of like when you first began this work and at the end of the day, it's like you start to think about those relationships. And when I look at the the current landscape of Argyle now, I know that there's some empty storefronts too. I know that there usually during the summer there's like the night market on Thursday evenings. But what does it look like for the future, especially for Vietnamese and other Asian-owned businesses on that street? What are we looking at in in the future if you have a crystal ball?
Yeah, I could take a stab at this,
Yeah.
Nikki.
Hmm.
So like one of the so like the nonprofit end of Haibayô, like we kind of have four kind of key areas. Like we're a very young nonprofit, and we have like there's a fellow who has jumped on board as a consultant, Jefferson Mock, who has a lot of
Oh
experience with
yeah.
nonprofit development.
Hmm.
He's helping like kind of establish the nonprofit alongside me and Nookie to grow it. But kind of the four key areas of the nonprofit itself, like one of it actually involves like this idea of like vision planning for the future. And that's the regenerate program. So we have like one is activate is kind of like to reintroduce like a lot of the cultural programs that we have, like the cultural festivals. So we've done, like in May, like the API block party. We just like collaborate with a bunch of other organizations for the Mid Autumn Moon, but we want to kind of expand it again to like what we did in 22. Regenerate that program is about like thinking about like urban planning, succession planning of businesses, um, and like also like kind of recruitment of like young Asian American entrepreneurs to like cover those vacant storefronts and create like regenerate the area to like sustain this cultural identity. So we are applying. We awaiting several grants, which unfortunately like right now like it's very hard to obtain grants,
Hmm.
especially under this administration. But like that is like kind of the pathway to answer these questions, right? And it's a lot of
Hmm.
work, right? There's never one stop solution to these things. So, I think the first thing we can do is like what I want to do for 2026 in the beginning of the year, maybe quarter one, is like creating like a group of stakeholders, business owners, landowners, second generation people who have taken over, to create like a conversation. Like I want to invite them here. Maybe eventually we create a steering committee to have like a seat at the table in terms of planning decisions that exist kind of right now beyond us. So like, like Argyle itself, why it's Argyle was because of like multiple leaders that of the past. Like Charlie Sue was one of them,
Mhm.
right? He was considered the mayor of Argyle, but he had his own organization that really worked directly with City Hall to be the representative of the businesses of the community. And once he passed, like that kind of disintegrated. And a lot of like these seats at the table were absorbed into the Uptown Chamber of Commerce, which like have some people like from the community on the board. But like I think like kind of how do we uh think about that motto and like build very hyper local power
Mhm.
amongst stakeholders in this community, um, to have the seat at the table, to have an input and a voice in terms of like planning investment, redevelopment projects that occur and impact our community. So like what that entails is really first step is like building that coalition. So that's like something that we're looking towards.
Mhm.
But then of course, like through that coalition, there's issues of,
Mhm.
vacant storefronts. So like, how do we think about succession? How do we think about leveraging funds from the city to redevelop projects of like certain buildings that maybe building owners don't have enough money to fix?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about like
Mhm.
co-op models of like purchasing a retiring business, right? There's models like that exist already in different kind of diasporas in like Houston and Seattle, in
Mhm.
these like neighborhoods that are like of Asian descent, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Um, like next week, CBCAC, Grace has this whole forum that talks about these things for Chinatown, which I'm attending. So like, how do we look at like other organizations doing very similar things that have done it already and learning from them and collaborating and partnering with them to do um, that here? So that's like one of the programs that Haibayô, the nonprofit, is really trying to engage in thinking about preservation, but like actionable steps towards preservation.
Mhm. And since the cafe's opening a couple weeks ago, and also coinciding with the CTA stop finally opening up after a few years, now ice raids have been happening all over Chicago, specifically on the north side as well. How has that impacted Argyle Street, and how have or how has how have both of you responded in the wake of the ice raids?
Yeah,
Wait, and
I could
actually,
share a little bit. Yeah,
and also on the snap cuts as well too, because that's also very important
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of the
yeah,
community in Argyle. I don't want to miss on that too. Yeah.
yeah. So I could share briefly, and also Nuki, I know that we have like plans in motion for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
these things in response. So like yeah, we've like I'm in constant conversation with the people who are part of the rapid response groups. Who's the who you know well,
Hmm.
and also he's like chief of staff for Juan. He's like I'm in constant conversation about like um when S rates happen, he's informing me, and like potentially informing other business owners. We were just at a conference actually the day before, or the same day where Juan actually State Rep Juan, where ICE pointed a gun in his face. Like I was in the same meeting with him. It was about like, hey, knowing your rights as business owners. It was at VAI, and we were there together, and like they were in the car, and they were like, hey, see you later, and then that happened, which is like pretty insane. Um, but yeah, it's been scary, right? Like the state of the world, like this is not like a system that I've ever imagined living in, right? It strips away so many rights of just like human rights, it's I don't know. I think we all kind of agree that this is like unprecedented and scary. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that like we just, shake in fear. It's about like building collective power, um, and having that knowledge. I know that Ellen is part of a group that is going to be on watch for the Gaudi students with whistles and like for them to get safely to school and safely
Hmm.
home. Um, and there's a but I'll let Nookie talk about like kind of the programs that we are thinking about in regards to both ICE and SNAP. There's been collaborations about potentially holding something here
Mm-hmm.
uh, regarding like knowledge-based stuff for business owners and community members regarding ICE raids, but also like maybe I'll let you talk about the SNAP stuff as well and the ICE potential
Mhm.
ICE programming.
Yeah, well, we've been sharing as much info as possible, and also educating ourselves. And as far as the SNAP benefits, like since we just opened, I mean, we were planning on having a shelf of um, non-perishable items so that we can like continue to add to the shelf, and then if anyone needs food, then they can just take it. So it's kind of like a give what you can, grab what you can type of program. And I mean, really, it's just like Hac said, it's unprecedented times, and we are just trying our best to gather as much information as possible and also share as much as possible, but also continue to cultivate joy, because while this is all happening, one thing that is sometimes difficult to do is to continue the joy, and to continue coming together in community. And so yeah, it's kind of, I would say it's difficult to navigate through, but we're still making it happen. um, that's it.
Yeah. And how are the elder Vietnamese folks that have known Argyle for so long, how have they responded to the work that's being done? How have they responded to the changes that have happened over the years? I mean, is there like a lamenting, like, I hate to see this go away? I'm curious to see what your thoughts are, especially with you trying to honor the elders
Mhm.
who have come before, but also trying to bring in second generation Vietnamese folks and other Asian folks to invest their time in there.
Yeah, I think in I've always felt that in order to move forward in a positive manner, I think that it's important to share the history of what was there before us. And for like any opportunity we have to connect with the elders, we do. And we oftentimes, like, they share their experiences. And it's like Haibayô is like meant to also be a space for healing, and healing between the generations. I always felt that there was a gap between the generations. Like
Mhm.
growing up, my parents had their own experiences, but it was too painful to share. And also, me growing up as an American, I also didn't understand their hardships. And so I think through the years, I've been able to heal my relationship with my parents, but that also echoes into the healing that is within the community itself. Because my experience is not only my experience. I also notice that it's like my friends are also going through the same thing as well. And so being able to bridge that gap and to allow the older generation to be able to share their experiences has been, I think, very monumental in our growth as Haibayô. The older folks have been coming into our space, and they love it. They love to see the old signs. They love to try the new drinks as well, and they love seeing the younger community being so excited to 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 like be in a space where you see the old signs. And
Mhm.
so it's been really beautiful to see
Mhm.
and to create.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
also
just okay.
oh yeah, sorry, Randy. Just to add a little bit to that, like there are like on the nonprofit end, like in the past, like we've done like a lot of kind of healing events, but additionally like oral history kind of programming, and that's like another kind of thing that we want to strengthen for the future is like really document and record both audio, like visual and audio of like lived experiences of long-term community members um, from this diaspora to have that lamented in like history, right? And like to have that honored and recorded. I think that's really important of archiving these experiences. So that's like program that we're also kind of navigating for the future as well.
Mhm. I am thinking about like what other ways are you using the space? I know you want to make it more community oriented, and I'm very curious, are you working on any partnerships or any collaborations with other organizations or groups? I'm curious to see what ideas you're looking to create for the next year. If you could share that.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, there's been quite a bit of like a lot of organizations who have been reaching out to us who want to collaborate. And I think with Haibayô, we've always it's never rigid. It's always been very creative. Like we come up with ideas, and then if like say you, Randy, like you had an idea and you wanted to do something on in our space, we just chat about it and then we create something together. And I think that's what's been really beautiful because there's no like one way. And but I do have to say, like, it's always rooted in creativity with music, with food, healing, sharing stories, and so it's just I would say like a wide array of ideas. Really, it's in many ways it's a blank canvas of what you want to create, but there's always a healing aspect to it and culture forward.
Yeah, and just to add to like in terms of like already existent partnerships and collaborations, like just yesterday we hosted, Lanny's office for their participatory budgeting meeting, which like allows platform for like residents of 48th Ward to like have a key role in like where the money is spent. Also with VAI, they're doing their youth, like providing space for kind of the youth organizing with Hương, the last 2 weekends. But also like, yeah, just like providing space, but also, um, we also were engaged with collaborating in terms of youth education this past year. Like we worked with Stomping Grounds Literary Arts Initiative, who's Elgin, who's been like kind of the resident DJ of Uptown for many years. But he also runs a nonprofit. So we provided audio production, zines, comic book illustration classes, um, as well as I think like narrative storytelling to like youth 5th to 8th grade, like at Gowdy at McCutcheon. And also recently, like I'm in conversation now of the newly formed like Friends of Gowdy board that I'm joining to like think about like fundraising of how to like give back to the youth in our space. So like there's like multiple layers and multiple platforms of
Mhm.
collaboration that we are always open to and
Mhm.
want to like strengthen.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
Tony. I know my friend Tony and I were like saying that we really need to have like a Vietnamese language exchange group
Hmm.
here. So I mean I'm trying to learn my Vietnamese too. It's still pretty choppy. Like if I say uh tôi đang học tiếng Việt từ đằng sau. I don't know if you're able to
Oh,
understand that.
yeah, I understand. You've been studying Vietnamese since June. Nice
Yeah,
work.
yeah. I know it's a hit or miss. It's really a hit or miss with a lot of folks because like either they understand me or they completely don't. So it's like, yeah, but I do better with the writing, surprisingly.
Yeah.
So I've been catching up on that instead. But yeah, but I hope that there will be more opportunities for that
Hmm.
too, because I think that the possibilities are endless. What would you say are your favorite recommended must-haves on the menu of the cafe?
Hmm.
You go first, Nookie.
Yeah, the cafe muy is delicious,
Mm,
and the coffee is a collaboration with Viet Five and Subdoc called Chu
mm,
Hai.
mm.
So it's like an after roast coffee, and it's made just like cafe sữa with the condensed milk, and then we add muy on top. So it's like a salted foam. It's delicious. So I highly recommend that. And the matcha latte is really good. The matcha is from Volition Tea, and it's single origin. It's a Chinese mocha, and it has a beautiful flavor. So I recommend those two.
Mm.
Yeah, I recommend. I'm usually like just straight black coffee. The bitter, the better. But I think like what I do want to kind of spotlight is that on the cafe side, we're very intentional about where we're sourcing the
Mm.
beans too, right? Like one at Vit Five has his own farm. It's like single origin direct from his family in Vietnam.
Hmm.
Annie from Volition works directly with farmers to really kind of spotlight the art and craft of these tea leaves, very high quality, single origin, and then also our other beans the Arabica beans. We work with Mikey, Indonesian American roaster here in Chicago that also really has like strong connections to like farmers throughout Southeast Asia, very small emerging coffee farmers. So like, like whatever the drink may be, I think like knowing that kind of pathway and like that
Mhm.
intention of like sourcing really high quality stuff, but also like in an impactful way for that honor kind of the farmers themselves. For me, I just like a straight black coffee iced.
Mm,
Um, but that's either the Vietnamese one or the Arabica ones. Robusta or Arabica I like. But yeah, I
mm,
do like the Vietnamese salted cream coffee a lot.
that's great
I came up
because
with the recipe too.
Yeah,
awesome,
Hack
awesome.
has been batching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't drink alcohol anymore, and I've also had to watch out for my sugar intake. So it's like but I still have the guilt of taking cafe soda,
Mhm.
sometimes. But I do like to drink. I'm actually starting to like cold brew, which I never thought I would like, but here I am, like years later, like, oh, okay, this is like a necessity. I look at it as a necessity because I need to stay awake. But yeah, like also shout out to Viet Phi because I am such a huge fan of Dun's work, Tuan's
Mhm.
work, and I'm also thinking about, for both of you, when you look back on all the hard work that you've been putting on, laying the groundwork for this to finally open, what are you most proud of right now at this moment?
Well,
Um,
for
oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Well, for me is building building this community has been the most fruitful and rewarding um, thing that I feel so proud of. And it's not just like it's not just like building of the community, but finding those who didn't always feel connected to home, right? To be able to feel proud of who they are, where they came from, and to also like be able to have this platform here where people can share about their experiences. We've had like adoptee stories shared in our space, or um, like Vietnamese folks like who grew up here who always felt uncomfortable being Vietnamese, or like Vietnamese, Cambodian, or Black, like and you just have this completely different experience. And so I've always felt um, in many ways disconnected from the community just because I always felt so different. And so I've always wanted to create a space where people feel welcome to be who they are and to be able to shine in their own light. And so I'd say I'm most proud of that and excited about that.
Yeah, I would have to echo that same feeling as well. Like I think when we started this earlier, you asked like, what was the intention of starting this? And it was like bringing community back. And I think like over the last 6, 7, 8 years, we've been able to garner an interest and commitment and investment in this community again. I think that's something to be proud of, and I'm proud of I'm proud of my co-founder and business partner Nuky too. I think I'm proud of us for I think we've talked internally a lot. It's like both of us really never imagined like coming back to Argyle,
Mhm.
right? So I'm proud that we kind of pivoted our mindset and like was able to invest in this way and you know be able to create a community with other, and it's not only us, right? Like none of this happens without everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen with like even like you, Randy, for allowing us to
Mm-hmm.
share our platform
Mhm.
and telling our story, but also like everyone that um yeah that we've worked with and partnered with and collaborated over the years, and moving forward too, that who we will the potentially new relationships that we build. um yeah, so I'm proud of that. Yeah.
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 And and as we start to wrap up, let me see if I could take another stab at Vietnamese here. So I want to say um tôi rất thích tôi rất thích nói chuyện với bạn Hải.
Aw, that's sweet.
Come on, Randy.
Cảm ơn
Cảm ơn
rất
bạn.
Cũng
cảm ơn rất
rất
nhiều.
mừng đã được chia sẻ và nói chuyện với Randy và Nuky. Cảm ơn.
Aw.
Okay, so thank you so much, and I hope that people get to follow Haibayô Cafe, and also you can follow Haibayô on Instagram. And yeah, all the best to you in your endeavors with this. I think this is going to be such a great gem for this community, and if not, it already is. But like, I really hope nothing but the best for this. This is just wonderful, and thank you so much for sharing your time.
Thank you so much, Randy. I appreciate it.